Okay, let's get into this.
Yeah.
You shared an article with us, and honestly, it has one of the most surprising analogies for learning I've come across.
Right.
Comparing the brain, this incredibly complex thing, to a pottery wheel, like shaping knowledge like clay.
Exactly. And the amazing thing about this article, Thalamus, Brain's Pottery Wheel of Knowledge Transfer by Shiva Narayan Textila Page,
Yeah.
is that it's not just, a cute metaphor. The author actually uses this pottery idea to propose a really physical, neuroscience-based way of thinking about how we learn, how we really build understanding.
Okay, so that's what we're doing in this deep dive. And we're going to try and spin this idea into shape ourselves. How does the thalamus actually connect to a pottery wheel? And what exactly is learnography and these brainpage modules? And I guess, why does this active hands-on view matter so much compared to, say, just sitting and listening?
Yeah, we'll definitely unpack all of that. We'll look at the core analogy, dig into the thalamus itself, because it does way more than people think define learnography and brain page modules.
Right.
Talk about why motor science is so key here. Look at the parallels between the brain and the wheel in detail. And, figure out what it all means for you, for how you actually learn things.
All right, let's start right there with the main idea. The article suggests learning isn't just information soaking in, it's more like information being actively shaped.
Exactly. Think about a potter, right? They use very specific movements, pressure. They're constantly getting feedback from the clay as it spins.
Yeah, feeling it, watching it.
And they use that to mold this lump into something specific. The article argues your thalamus does something similar. It coordinates the sensory stuff coming in and the motor commands going out to actually sculpt knowledge.
And that active shaping, that's what the author calls learnography.
That's the term, yeah. And to really get it, we kind of need to picture the thalamus.
Yeah.
Imagine like two small egg-shaped things deep inside your head sitting right on top of the brainstem.
Okay, center of the brain, basically.
Pretty much. And traditionally, yeah, it's known as the main relay station. Almost everything you sense, sight, sound, touch, taste, goes through the thalamus on its way to the cortex, the brain's outer layer.
Smell's the exception.
Smell's the main one. It takes a different initial route. But yeah, mostly it's the relay center.
But the article says it's way more than just a relay. Like, it's involved in controlling movement, focusing attention, knowing where you are in space, making memories.
Exactly. And in this learnography model, it's explicitly called a motor learning wheel. It's where the doing, the physical action part of learning gets woven in.
Got it. So learnography isn't passive.
Not at all. It's task-driven. It really emphasizes your body's role, your motor systems, and how the thalamus helps manage all that. It pushes back hard against the idea that learning is just, absorbing facts passively.
And then brain page modules. I like that phrase. What are those exactly in this model?
They're presented as the actual, neural structures of knowledge, not just abstract ideas, but things physically built and solidified in your brain because you engaged in tasks, because you used motor activities.
So you're literally building knowledge structures through action. How does that work?
Yeah.
The article mentioned 4 steps for this brain page modulation.
Yeah, it lays out a kind of process. First step, sensory input. That's everything coming in related to the task. Reading a book, hearing someone explain something, feeling materials, watching someone do it.
All the raw data.
Right. Then step 2 is the thalamic relay. But again, not just passing it along. The thalamus is filtering it, deciding what's important, directing the traffic to the right brain areas.
Okay, managing the flow.
Exactly. Step 3 is motor execution. This is the crucial part for learnography. It's you doing something physical. Writing, talking, drawing, building, gesturing, using tools.
The hands-on part.
The article claims these actions are key for actually encoding the information.
And the last step.
Cognitive reinforcement. So as you do the task again, maybe adjust your actions based on feedback. The thalamus helps with recalling and tweaking things. It's this loop action, feedback, adjustment, thalamic processing that builds and strengthens these brain page maps and modules.
So it's iterative. You build it bit by bit through doing and refining.
Precisely. You're not just thinking about it, you're physically engaging with it, guided by your brain to construct the knowledge.
Which explains why the article puts such a huge emphasis on motor science. It's not just extra, it's core.
Totally. It calls learning a neuromotor experience. Things like sketching, working out a problem on a board, typing, even just using hand gestures when you explain something.
Yeah.
Those aren't just study aids. They're motor activities that are deeply tangled up with the cognitive process itself.
And the thalamus is the link, connecting what you sense with what you do.
It's the bridge. It lets you interact with information physically, manipulate it, and that interaction, that physical shaping, is what builds those solid neural structures, the brain pages.
So this whole sensory motor loop is the foundation of learnography.
It really is. Knowledge isn't just, as the article says, poured in, like in a passive lecture. It's actively built, sculpted by the learner, engaging their motor system.
Which is why just sitting and listening might not be the most effective way to build those strong, lasting brain pages. You're not really engaging that loop.
Exactly. You're not working the clay, so to speak.
It's actually kind of amazing how well the pottery analogy seems to fit when you break it down. The article goes into quite a bit of detail on the functional parallels.
Yeah, it does. Think about the platform of processing first.
Okay.
A pottery wheel gives you that stable spinning base. It lets the potter apply force evenly, get feedback, maintain balance, rhythm.
Right, it enables the shaping.
And the thalamus, in this view, acts like that central hub. It regulates the flow of signals, synchronizes things, coordinates sensory input with motor output, kind of refines the data. Both provide this active, stable platform for shaping something.
Okay, that makes sense. And then there's the motor interaction and feedback part.
Crucial for both. The potter's hands are always on the clay, right? Feeling its shape, its resistance, constantly adjusting based on that touch feedback.
Non-stop adjustments.
And in the brain, the thalamus is doing that integration job. It takes sensory feedback, like how your hand feels moving as you write, or what you see as you build something, and weaves it together with the motor commands. This lets you adapt, refine your actions.
Which is how you build the brain page modules through that cycle.
That's the idea. The learning happens in that sensory motor loop, managed by the thalamus.
And this connects to skill development and structural memory. You get good at pottery through practice, repetition.
Hours and hours, centering the clay, pulling walls, shaping forms. That repetition builds muscle memory, expertise.
Going in the brain.
The article links this to how we learn skills and procedures. Repeated activation of specific neural pathways involving the thalamus, cerebellum, basal ganglia brain areas involved in movement and habit strengthens those connections.
So the repetition isn't just about practicing the action.
It's literally building the knowledge structures. Those brain page modules get encoded through the motor pathways you use. Just like the physical act of pottery makes a physical pot, the physical acts in learnography shape physical neural structures.
Wow. Yeah, okay. And the outcome and autonomy.
Well, the finished pot belongs to the potter, right? It's their creation. Learnography aims for autonomous learning knowledge that's truly yours, internalized, flexible, because you built it yourself.
The learner becomes a creator.
Exactly.
Sure.
By actively shaping the material through motor actions, you gain a deeper ownership and understanding.
So the key things linking pottery and thalamic learning, according to the article, are motion, feedback, and intentional effort. These are the hallmarks.
Those are the hallmarks, yeah. It paints learning as this very active, creative, personal process.
Okay, so let's try and pull the main findings together from the source. What are the big takeaways?
All right, first, the thalamus acts like this central wheel integrating sensory input and motor output to shape knowledge.
Got it. The pottery wheel hub.
Second, motor science is essential. You need physical action to build these brain page modules.
Not optional.
Third, the thalamus helps enhance focus and precision during this active learning. Fourth, it all relies on these dynamic feedback loops between the thalamus and the cortex.
That constant back and forth communication.
Fifth, task engagement using motor interaction builds much stronger, more durable brain pages than just passive learning. Sixth, the pottery analogy isn't just cute, it seems to functionally map pretty well.
Okay.
Seventh, learnography activates broad brain circuits, thalamus, cortex, sure, but also cerebellum, basal ganglia, motor cortex areas involved in planning and movement.
It's a whole brain activity then, really.
Very much so. And finally, the big implication, how we design learning should change. We need to integrate motor science and thalamic engagement. Move away from just lectures.
Towards, what does the article suggest?
It basically calls for turning classrooms into learning studios, more like workshops, dynamic, tactile, task-focused.
So less pouring information in, more spinning it into shape.
That's the metaphor, yeah. It talks about using task modules, maybe giving students miniature school roles where they have to do things, focusing on motorized brain page building.
Right. So a fundamental shift in how we think about the learning environment.
Definitely.
So wrapping this up, the big idea is that your thalamus might be working like a pottery wheel, taking raw input, and through your active engagement, through motion and feedback and effort, shaping it into real, structured knowledge.
Yeah, it reframes learning, makes it much more of a creative, physical act, not purely mental.
And it really makes you think about your own learning, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How often are we just passively consuming versus actively engaging, manipulating, shaping the information ourselves?
It's a good question to ask. Are you just listening or are you doing something with what you're learning?
Which brings us to that final thought drawn from the article. What if your brain actually needs more than just listening or reading? What if real understanding, deep understanding, comes from getting your body involved, using your hands, engaging your motor system?
What if you need to actively spin your own wheel of knowledge?
How could you bring more of that active shaping and maybe a bit less passive listening into how you learn?
Something to think about for your own brain's pottery studio.
Definitely food for thought. Time to start shaping.
Indeed. And that concludes this deep dive.